Computer. Hello and welcome to the latest episode. I'll number the episode whenever I find out what actual fucking episode this is of what is now called the Cast Iron Strength Podcast, formerly known as the Online Strength Coach Podcast, resurrected for your listening pleasure. I'm joined with our two new co-hosts, Alistair Engels, to use his official term, our head of medical, aka the only physiotherapist that we have because we're a tiny little fucking shitty company, and our Greek guy who hangs around and pervs on chicks, aka Yanis.
How's it going, guys?
Yeah, good. Guys, do you want to just give us a little, obviously most people won't know who you are. Well, probably everyone knows who you are because it'll just be people that we fucking train who will be listening to this podcast.
Yeah.
For the benefit of the people who don't know who you are, can you just give us a little introduction about yourselves and who you are and what you're about? So we'll start with Yanis and then Ali.
Well, yeah, you may know my name. You don't know my story, so quickly I'll say that I've been training with Mark for like a year, almost, a bit less. I am mostly doing weightlifting, but also trying to do some other, hypertrophy work and strength work, but I'm still very weak, so we're working on that. I'm doing a master in sports science, so I'm very interested in working with athletes and generally improving like sports performance. So yeah, that's for me.
Yeah, so I've been training with Mark for 10 years now. Is it? Yeah, 10 years.
It's a bit more than me.
It might be 11 years now.
Yeah, it's been a long time. I just lift weights and physio, and that's me. I've known Mark for a long time, so now I'm here.
Don't mention the fact that you've got 2 degrees. You've got a sports science degree, and you also have a physiotherapy degree, and you're also a physio.
Yeah,
and you're also a hero. NHS
I'm
hero.
Essential, yeah.
People come out and clap your ass Thursday every night, 8 p.m. every week.
For the longest time, I was just doing phone calls. Although I've been pulled into hospitals now, so it's a little different.
Not the hero we deserve, but the hero we need right now.
Yeah. Look, the whole effort's been rested on my shoulders. It was completely me.
Are you the reason why they don't have any PPE?
Oh, there's plenty in Scotland. Scotland's not struggling at all. It's down south where the problems are.
Just close the borders. Should be fine.
Yeah, close the borders, open the country up, let the English deal with it. I think that's...
Build a wall.
There already is a wall. We just have to resurrect Hadrian's Wall.
Put Jon Snow on the wall.
Or if we do the Antonine Wall, then Edinburgh, the south of that, so we don't want to do that. All right, so today we're just going to talk about the current situation, the whole lockdown situation, and all the gyms closing, and what we can do to train as lifters in this situation with limited or probably no equipment. So to the floor. Anyone, what the fuck am I meant to do at this time?
Buy a home gym. Okay. End of thread.
Well, but I can't buy a home gym because I can't buy anything because everything's sold out.
You go to a blacksmith. He might be able to forge one.
He's closed, not essential.
They're not all of them. But yeah.
That's like no excuses.
Let's say my one's closed and I can't get to them.
Okay.
Well, yeah, I'm not gonna go to the extreme that Ali goes, but I learned to, if you're serious about training, I learned to just buy something. Kettlebells, dumbbells, bands, some form of resistance.
I can't get kettlebell.
So you're suggesting buying dumbbells and kettlebells and stuff, and I suggest buying a home gym, and I'm wrong, but you're right.
But I'm just saying there might be a 2K difference between our suggestions, which.
There's literally no kettlebells and no dumbbells. You can't buy them.
Yeah.
Not an option. So
although small detour, surely all this stuff's going to flood the market when this is done.
For sure.
Yeah.
We're gonna be dripping in. Well, not that we're already not dripping in plates and bars, but.
I don't think we need any more dumbbells in cast iron strength.
Why not?
It's because we're not gonna fit in the gym anymore. They're just gonna be dumbbells.
Yeah, it's not where I fit them in this gym. It's where I fit them in the next gym.
Then definitely.
Although I wouldn't be getting rid of it anytime soon if you did buy it, because who knows if there's going to be second waves of this or whatever.
When's the second wave coming? October lockdown.
Well,
lockdown 2, Electric Boogaloo.
Yeah.
This time for Christmas.
Yeah, so we like. I think most people hearing that will have some form of resistance at home. Can we agree on that? Or
Nah,
no?
I can tell you for a fact most people don't.
Most people don't. Okay.
Yeah, well, at least from the fact of the 40 or 50 people I training at the minute, the vast majority of them have nothing.
They're going to have a horrible time when they come back to the gym. Like and you have to make it worse. You need to give them 10s.
Make it 12. Make it 12.
We'll discuss that in maybe the following episode of the podcast.
Returning
to training and what we should do.
I mean, they've been doing high volume, probably running, loads of endurance-based stuff. So obviously, when they come back to the gym, we need to phase them back to strength work. So maybe 10 sets of 15 on squats on day one. That'll
what about 20 sets of 20? Swedish volume training.
Yeah.
As I call it, the dead volume training.
And then you could do 30 by 30 French volume training, 40 by 40 Spanish volume training.
It's the 50 by 50. That's the
secret. You don't know what to tell them about that, Ali. For fuck's sake.
Yeah.
You meant to keep that secret.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
to be fair, that probably isn't as dumb as some of the things we've done before. Some of the kind of physio, early powerlifting days, they were a bit ropey with our training.
They're still pretty ropey, just less ropey.
Well, yeah, they've refined a bit over time.
Well, I mean, you don't have so you say many of them don't even have resistance, but I guess even at this stage, if you care about lifting, you'll find you can focus on what you can do instead of focus on what you can't do.
Yeah, absolutely. There are constraints that you got to operate in, so you have to put constraints on what you can do. So you need to assume people can basically their body and a house or a flat.
Yeah, I think you need to come in terms of you're not gonna progress your strength.
You're probably gonna regress strength. Let's be.
You're probably gonna regress, but on the other hand, how like we know strength losses are the slowest. So in the long run, you just can focus on what will help your strength. So let's say how many of your clients have nagging injuries, like tight?
I mean, it's a good time to work on rehab for sure if you've got any nagging injuries. But I don't think.
So
yeah, so you could focus on that side of things. But here's an interesting one from Mark. So I was talking to it was Chris the other week, and he was asking me various things about running, which obviously, for anyone who doesn't know, Chris, a 120 kilo guy who's
117.7 kilos as of today.
Yeah, focused on lifting, and he started doing couch to 5K during the pandemic. So, do you think that obviously you want to do something while all this is going on, but do you think that there's stuff that you could do with your training that would actively harm your return coming back? Like,
Yeah, you could try running 6 days a week, which I did for the first 2 weeks, and then you could pick up a knee and a back injury that stops you training altogether for the following week. You can do that.
We need to set this up. You need to injure as many people as possible so that I've got a good.
I do that already. What are you talking about? It's literally why you can afford to live. NHS is paying you nothing for being a hero. You're making all the money from the people that I break.
Mark 10 minutes ago, don't mention the NHS.
I never said you can mention the NHS if you want. I never said that.
I am making absolutely no comment on that due to certain policies.
Contractual obligations that I may or may not be under.
We're going to have to change its name. Something. It's free. It's free. It's a free service that everyone has access to, but it's not the thing that everyone's been talking about.
It's a service that's free at the point of access, for certain things are essential.
Well, so I think we know like the training you do will have a specific adaptations that you want. So strength training will make you strong. So even if you don't have the weights to do strength work, minimal weights will have some adaptation on you because you're not used to that. You know what I mean? So if you're not used to a specific adaptation, a very, very low amount of a stressor will cause the adaptation. So if you are Mark, pull-ups would bring very, very good adaptations that would do to me. You know what I mean? Because I was better at pull-ups than Mark because I weigh half of what Mark weighs.
Maybe even less than half.
Definitely. So, for example, and especially the more you do something, the less the adaptation will be with us. So, elite athletes will make very incremental increases in strength or size. But when you put rugby players that, have high strength training in the gym and you put them do BFR, you'll see, even in these elite athletes, increases in muscle size and even strength in some cases. And that's because their body's like, what's that? I've never done that. So you will adapt to that.
Most people listening to this won't know what you're saying when you say BFR. So you're referring to blood flow restriction training.
Oh,
so
yeah.
You want to maybe bring us through. So you're currently doing this at the minute as one of your adaptations to your training. So do you want to walk us through some of the protocols you're using, what actually you're using for the occlusion, and how you're utilizing it in your own training at the minute?
Yeah. So stop me if I get too nerdy. So basically, BFR stands for, as Mark said, blood flow restriction. So you basically stop or reduce blood flow to your muscles. And you do that by applying a pressure. So you either with a band or wraps or something that will cut the pressure to the muscle you want to work on. So let's say if I want to work my leg, I'll cut the blood flow to the leg by bonding a wrap distal to the leg. Proximally to the leg. So what does that?
When you say proximal refers to the center of the body, right?
Yeah.
So just assume that the people you're talking to know nothing.
Yeah. So in the top of the leg, as close to the top of the leg as you can. So if I wrap, let's say I have here standard issue knee wraps. So you wrap these on the upper thigh, and you put them at a pressure of, let's say, RP 7 out of 10. 10 being you can withstand the pain. What will this do is it will reduce the blood that goes into your thigh muscles, and it will completely cut off the blood that goes out of them. So basically what you're doing is you don't allow oxygen to go into the muscle, and you don't allow all the metabolic byproducts, like all the shit that come out when you train, like lactic acid and all stuff, get out.
I mean, lifting weights is anaerobic anyway, which means without oxygen. So pretty much you're just making it less cardio because there's even less oxygen in the system.
Thanks for that useless interjection. Yanis, do you want to continue as you were?
Yeah, I got lost here, but yeah. So yeah, you have no oxygen in the muscle, and you have all these byproducts accumulating. So quick parenthesis, training in terms of the size principle. When we lift a weight, never mind. This will get too complicated. So let's step back and say that this effect of having no oxygen in the muscle will make it fatigue much more quickly than it would with oxygen in the muscle, and all these byproducts that stay in will make it fatigue much more quickly. So the very light weights will make you fatigue much more quickly than they would without this stimulus.
But what does that do to performance, though? Does it actually affect performance, or does it just fatigue you faster? Like, what's the research on that?
There's quite a good amount of research on the positive effects of flow restriction training on both hypertrophy and in strength in both healthy and rehab populations. Like, it's really well researched and it is very efficacious. We use it quite a lot with Edinburgh.
Especially for hypertrophy. Especially for hypertrophy, there's no doubt that it works. So, and even in elite athletes, like Mark has done it in elite athletes. So if it works for them, it will work for you as well.
So there's quite a good study in 2014 done with collegiate level football players. During their normal strength training, they used two groups. The experimental group did their normal workout, but then finished with some blood flow restriction training on the back squat with, I think, 20-30% of their max using a protocol. A protocol. I can't remember what it is, but it's something that would be like 20 reps, like a minute off, and then 20 reps again.
Yeah, usually it's like 30, 15, 30, 15, 15, 15.
Yeah. So there's various protocols on it. So the experimental group got bigger and stronger versus the control group, which just did the normal program. The only thing these guys did extra was a couple of drop sets of BFR with knee wraps for the occlusion to the thighs, and just squatting like the bar, or maybe like 30 or 40 kilos.
Okay.
So, and you can definitely, like, if you're not that advanced, a body weight squat with BFR might be enough. You know what I mean?
And even then, if you are advanced, a split squat with BFR will be more than enough. It doesn't matter how fucking advanced you are. If you go split squat with like a BFR protocol, you're gonna.
Yeah, there's no way. Yeah, there's no way. Like, yeah, definitely. So, yeah, it depends on the adaptation you seek. So for hypertrophy, it will definitely work. For strength, it will work a bit less, but I think it will work. Research shows it works for strength as well, but more in untrained people rather than in trained ones.
It definitely works with untrained people.
Yeah,
for sure.
So
and anything really works with untrained people, though. Like, it's the problem with the research in sports science is the populations that they.
Yeah,
I literally just give you like research with elite athletes who are like strength trained.
Yeah,
someone who are probably stronger than you.
Well, true. These are the studies that are decent, but there are a lot of studies that try and pass off active populations as sports science students, which isn't the case. Like
I don't know. I was looking at. So I'm currently putting together a presentation on detraining, and then kind of what you can do to mitigate it, and kind of how you're gonna come back into training. And there was a study from, I think it was 2011, was a meta-analysis of in-season training, detraining, on the effects of elite rugby players and American football trainers or American football athletes, and it had a cohort of 1,015 people, which are all elite athletes. So there is research out there. It's not as like widespread as like students or other populations, but you just have to be. It's more about you being cognition of the research you're looking at, rather than making a blanket statement that there is no research out there, because there is research out there.
Oh no, I was just asking. I didn't know.
No. There is obviously there's not as much research on those kinds of populations, but you can, like, if you want to draw a parallel to a well-trained strength athlete, then you just need to be a little bit more kind of savvy about the research you're looking at and what you're drawing your conclusions from.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with both here. You both have points. So the point is that the thing that Ali says is that, this influencer ripped guy that tries to act more sophisticated than he really is. He'll say, oh, the research shows that, it doesn't matter if you do high frequency or high volume, the results will be the same in terms of, let's say, getting bigger. And the study that said that, well, yeah, it did say it, but, it did 6 weeks of training in 60-year-old women, which have never trained before. So, yeah, they're both frequency and high volume won't have a difference in what you do. But if you are a guy that's training for 3-4 years, then the effects of these variables will be different. So
it's quite funny though that there's obviously good research out there in the sports field and stuff like that, and there's a lot of nonsense as well. With nonsense claims and things like that. But it's funny, it's the same in the rehab world as well.
Research in general, people with agendas. So I watched a debate. It's funny you mentioned the hypertrophy research between Mike Israetel and there's a guy, Greg Douchet. He's just like an IFBB pro. He's got a channel that's blowing up on YouTube at the minute. I think it was like in December of last year. And Mike Israetel is kind of huge for the minimal viable or minimal effective dose, blah blah blah. Their whole thing is that like kind of more is better for hypertrophy, but you kind of need to find for the individual where their maximum and where their minimum is, and kind of where their optimal range is. So there is research to show that as an outcome, but then there's also research that's kind of like contradictory to that. So he'll speak very much like the research that he's talking about is like cast iron fact, when there is like a reasonable body of research that says to a point. So like the meta-analysis is there's a greater response to volume to a point, but as he's like is kind of more weighing towards like more is better kind of thing.
See that happens in rehab research as well. You know, you can have conflicting theories that have both been proven to work. So, you know, you always get your extreme people on both ends who absolutely argue their side, and you know that side of the argument's right and the other side's wrong.
Well, it just happens that his hypothesis.
Yeah.
Dr. Silverman.
And you know, the more that you kind of get exposed to this stuff, I genuinely believe you just have to try it for the individual person.
It just so happens that his business also runs that model, and he's making money with that model. So obviously he has a bit of a bias towards that approach.
But you know what like for sure, I mean, he's selling something. But even, you know, in my rehab principles, I guess, and in your training principles, when you're training someone, there's always biases in it. You know, like the problem that I have in rehab, I guess, is I've got a huge bias towards strengthening. And, you know, with a lot of the research in rehab, strengthening is one of the biggest things you can do. Like it's probably one of the single, you know, it's multifaceted. We'd really have to get into it, but strengthening is huge. But I obviously have a huge bias towards that. So, you know, one of the things.
Well, with a shirt that says squat, I can't believe that's true.
Well, you know, one of the things that I have to do in my practice as a physio is kind of, you know, really learn the stuff that isn't strengthening, because I've got a huge bias towards that. I mean, the problem is a lot of the time you'd be correct, but it's the times you're not, and that's how you know you need to get better on all these kind of different approaches, which I'm sure we'll go in at some stage in this podcast, but we might not. Who knows?
I mean, we almost certainly will. I mean, we currently can't even let Yanis finish what blood flow restriction is like, and the philosophical debates about sports science.
Should people train BFR?
So basically, you've been using it. So what have you actually been doing with it?
Yeah. So well, I'm lucky enough to have some equipment, and unlucky enough to have a small ankle injury. So for legs, I can't do anything that has dorsiflexion in it. So basically, I do heavy exercises because I have the load. So I start with heavy exercises like glute bridges, barbell split squats, which can load the muscle without being dorsiflexion. And then I use the BFR as a supplement to the end of this workout. And I do 2 exercises of 3 sets each, and I reach failure at every set, which is not very hard to do. So I think the main thing to take away from BFR is that it obviously works well. It works better as a supplement to high load. So in all these studies that Mark mentioned, people were not just doing BFR, they were doing high load and then BFR. And this was better than high load alone. But BFR alone wasn't better than high load alone. So BFR will just work better with high load.
But was it comparable to high load? Is it comparable to high load?
No, it's not. It's worse for strength. It's comparable to hypertrophy. And I think because of the thing that we mentioned before for adaptation, strength athlete, which is not used to training to failure, training to failure in high rep ranges, he will see hypertrophy, gain muscle by doing BFR. So I think most people hearing this at home will gain muscle by doing BFR, even without heavy training. Just doing BFR.
That's hugely beneficial for people then, if they can, because one of the major precursors to strength gain is hypertrophy. And in fact, it's something that we periodize in deliberately into our periodization is periods of growth, whether you call it volume training, GPP, hypertrophy, whatever you call it. One of the major adaptations that we seek during those periods is size growth itself. So we're basically here. Here's one method we can utilize to get jacked.
Yeah, definitely. Like, and like, it's the most painful thing I've done in a while. Like,
So
it really feels
what
so.
can I use? What can I use to cause occlusion, Yanis?
Yeah. So the best thing I found is, and which also used in like a little athletic population stuff, is knee wraps. So your standard knee wraps. You don't need to go and buy the heavy ones because you're not putting them on your knees to hold load. So
Would surgical like surgical band work and a stretchy, you get the compression bandage, would that work?
Not really. It needs to have some tension in it, so
It does compression. It's got quite elastic.
Okay.
You can use them
It's
as
the
like a
voodoo band
light knee
stuff.
wrap, like an ace band. What are you saying, Ollie?
It's the voodoo band stuff you're wanting. The voodoo flossing, whatever it's called.
It's called voodoo flossing. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Anything that can do a 7 out of 10 RPE when you wrap your leg around it and you feel like a 7 out of 10 in terms of pain, I think should be enough occlusion. For me, it's knee wraps because also they are kind of thick. So the more thick they are, the less pressure you have to apply to have the same effect. So when you do it for the first time and a knee wrap is like 8 centimeters, it will be better than something that's 4 centimeters.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, for people, I would suggest that I bought it for like 10 on the Amazon. Wrap it around 7 out of 10, and then I would suggest to train to failure because it seems to have better hypertrophic effects. But if it's your first time doing it, you're gonna feel it anyway. So if you do something like 3 sets of 20 and you don't reach failure, you can do it for the first 2 weeks, and then to progress it, just then train to failure.
So how long is your rest between those 20 rep sets, and how many times per week would you recommend someone do the same protocol for? So if I'm doing split squats, say 3 sets of 20, how much is my rest, and how many times a week do you think I should do that?
So rest definitely less than a minute. 45 seconds is the best. I go into my next set and I feel like I haven't rested because obviously the blood doesn't go out. So there's like it's painful in your second set. You will feel painful from the second rep. You'll be able to do 15, but it will feel painful from the second rep. So yeah, 45-second rest. By the way, you don't get them off between sets. Some people do that, so don't get them off for the entire time you do it. Have them on, but if you do 2 exercises of 3 sets, that will be 8-10 minutes max. So you should be fine. By the way, it's absolutely safe. So unless you have any cardiovascular problems, it's absolutely safe. Diagnosed cardiovascular problems, so yeah, I wouldn't worry about that. What else is on it? What else did you ask me about the rest?
That's right. So frequency.
Yeah, frequency. How many times? Yeah, so because you don't use heavy weights on BFR, you don't damage your muscle. Actually damage the fiber. So that means that you don't need a lot to recover from it, and you can do it as often as you like. That would depend on your other training. So obviously, if you do other stuff, you can't do it every day. But for example, I do it 3-4 times a week, and it's absolutely fine for me because it's very lightweight, so you don't get damaged. So you can do it. I would suggest to do it 3-4 times a week. Generally, you can see the benefits starting from after you have completed 10 to 12 sessions in total. So if you do it 4 times a week, after 3 weeks, you will see obvious differences in your gains.
Jack the Tangier. Okay, yeah. So blood flow restriction is definitely something we can utilize. From a programming standpoint, pretty much what I think we should be looking to do at this time. We should be trying to gain muscle, ideally, so we can utilize kind of what some stuff Yanis is talking about, blood flow restriction. We can also just do simple body weight training to failure. Like it's easy to do. We don't really like you can get pretty funky with some of the stuff you can do. Like you can create a TRX with a towel in the door. You can fill up your backpack full of books. You can grab there's quite a few exercises Ali does. You don't need a lot of load on. So, for example, for a quad, you can do a step up where you keep all the weight on the front foot, keep attention on that. So, Ali, do you want to talk about some of the kind of the exercise variations that you might have for maybe quadricep?
I mean, from a rehab for a rehab point of view, the ones that everybody's different. There's no set thing that you give people, but it's something that I generally like from a rehab context is true single leg exercises. So I don't like things like Bulgarian split squat because I think you get you get balance aspects and things like that, and you get support from the rear leg. Whereas stuff like step ups, heel taps from a box, pistol squats, that sort of thing, it's a true single leg exercise. And you can pick up a lot of weakness on these things if you do it right. But see, in physio in general, just deviating here, something that I think, not across the board, but, generally speaking, they get wrong is exercise execution. I think a lot of physios and rehab people don't really pay attention to that aspect as much. So they'll give exercises to strengthen someone. One of the most basic is called through range quads, which is, something you give very low level people in physio. And what through range quad is basically it's a leg extension with one leg with body weight, not very hard. It's a real basic exercise. You wouldn't really give it to the population that we're talking to. This is more for older people or people who are pretty messed up, post surgery and stuff. But even through range quads or body weight leg extension, if you want to call it that, try it now if you're listening. You get people. You get people who just kick their legs back and forth. A lot of people, when you give them that from a physio point of view, because when you're in clinics, I think there's research that shows that patients only take away 30% of what you say. So you really have to reinforce the important points, because chances are they'll come back, something will be wrong, and it's because they've not listened to the point the first time, because they need a bit longer to get the point reinforced. So something that I notice quite a lot is I give exercises sometimes to some of these older people that physios in the past have told me are rubbish and useless, and you need to go higher level, more compoundy type ones. Whereas I've got beneficial, and these are injured populations, bear in mind, but I've gotten good results from the more basic exercises done properly, rather than put them to that level first. So, the through range quads, if you will, a lot of people who do it, they basically kick their leg out like this, do 10, and you feel absolutely nothing. There's no effect to that. Whereas when you straighten your knee, really squeeze the quads as hard as you can, hold for a few seconds, then slowly lower, control the tempo, have a bit of an isometric contraction and things like that. Even if you try it now, if you're not injured, I guarantee you'll actually feel something there compared to if you just kick your leg out. And for these injured populations, that makes a huge difference to actually rehabbing them if they, execute the exercise correctly. So, going back to it, what we're talking about, the true single leg exercises, so stuff like step ups. So in the gym, what I notice with step ups a lot is people do that kicking leg kind of thing and don't really feel it properly. So you see people stepping up on bench, with dumbbells, and they're not really feeling anything, whereas I like what I call a controlled step up. So, the foot's up on the bench, but you lean forward and put all the weight on that first leg, and your knee will almost go like that when you get it right, because it's almost like a pistol squat to a bench. It's the way you do things as well. So I guess
I think
Definitely.
that's a really good point. The actual quality of execution, and something that I was trying to get out of you. So when we talk around, so let's talk around some more general exercises. So if I talk about so like something like a side lying leg lift, for example.
So sideline hip
So,
abduction, yeah.
yeah. So how could that be done poorly? And then what adjustments could you make to make it more effective?
Well, let's do a single leg.
He has literally corrected me on that a lot, many times.
So let's do single leg raise because it's a bit easier. So sorry, straight leg raise. So straight leg raise works the hip as well. It works the hip flexors. You know, it's an exercise I've given to a few powerlifters who've had hip problems in the past. You know, so you know, a straight leg raise, literally all you're doing is lying on your back, keeping your knee straight and lifting the leg up to about 45 degrees, then bringing it back down. So again, you know, most people who you see, who you give this stuff, they just kick the leg up and down and whatever. You know, they let their knee bend a little bit, which obviously takes pressure off the hip and applies it at the knee, which isn't what you're wanting, and all this sort of stuff. So, you know, what I get people on a straight leg raise, I get them to squeeze their quad as hard as they can, so they've got a bit of an isometric contraction. They lift their leg up to 45 degrees, hold it for a second, then slowly lower. And you know, I don't care if you know you squat 300 kilos, you still feel that. You might not get an adaptation from it, you might not get stronger from it, but you'll still feel it. You know, you'll actually feel the leg work.
Well, that's not necessarily true, because a squat's a gross all over body motor task, whereas if you're targeted hip flexor
Oh yeah,
set plane, then I will get adaptation from that.
you'll get adaptation. I more meant specific adaptation, but yeah, you're right in that sense. If you mean that, because obviously that's why I give it to people, to strengthen specific areas. So yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I think execution is a key word. Like I think in our setting and in actual gym settings, like I see a lot of people, especially more amateur intermediates, that are just flopping about exercises. Myself included sometimes when I'm bored. So
Me as well when I'm tired.
yeah. Oh,
Or
Mark, I
just
can
you
feel
in
that.
general
Well,
when
I
you're
can feel
training.
that. Just flopping around. Fast like CrossFit. But yeah, I think also the way you do the exercises will be a huge thing that you can change to elicit adaptations at home. So what I mean by that, so broadly speaking, how does muscle grow? You can either put a mechanical stress on it, like weight, or you can put a metabolic stress on it, like goat failure. For me, that's the two ways you can go about it, the two extremes. But when we mean, I think when we mean mechanical tension is like a bit sometimes overlooked. So a 5 kg dumbbell can be heavier to lift than a 15 kg dumbbell if you change the way you do the exercise. So a quick example of
Tempo,
that.
technique.
It's not only the technique, it's the level of exercise, basically, how far you put it from the body. So if I do the side raise with my arm bent, it'll be way harder, way easier than if I do it with my arm straight, because the weight is further from my body. So if body weight squats are very easy for me, and I want to increase my quad muscles, then I can lean on a door and do a kind of CC squat variation. And that means because I put my torso away from the quad more, the quad feels more weight on it while you're not putting any more weight physically. You know what I mean? You're changing the level of the exercise, and the demand on the muscle is harder.
That's
Although you don't
kind of
put
what
more
Ali's basically just kind of parroting what Ali's saying. Kind of the way the exercise is done or how it's targeted is kind of like really
it's
important.
not exactly what it says, because
in a roundabout way. Well, in the way I'm framing it, it is, because I'm trying to like segue it. So you could so if we say two ways of doing a step up, you could do it sloppy like most people do, where I just pick up the weight and step up onto the bench or step up onto the platform, or I could do it the way Ali teaches it, where it's keep all your weight in the front leg, slow tempo, don't have any support from the back leg. So I could potentially pick up 240-kilo dumbbells and do it sloppy and then feel the quad working. Or if I do it the way that Ali's coach did, and it's happened to me, and I've seen it happen to other people, where all of a sudden you can't do that weight anymore. You have to body weight's all of a sudden enough, or 5 kilos is enough.
Yeah,
by modifying the way it's done.
Yeah, but this is like what Ali is saying, and this is definitely something that we can make it harder, especially at home, is correct technique and intent when you do it. So mind-muscle connection and intent when you do an exercise. What I'm talking about is using a lighter load that you have at home, but changing the lever of the exercise so you make the actual physical demand on the muscle harder. So squats vs CC squats, which are harder? CC squats are harder. And everyone has done and knows how painful they are. And this is because your torso is further behind, so your quads are lifting more load.
Yeah, it's like leg press versus hack squat, which is harder hack squat.
Yeah.
If we've done those exercises, or I've done those machines.
Or exactly, like, or the side raises is the most common example. Like, you see people lifting heavier, they go like this with their arms bent. You can't lift the same weight if your arms are straight and rise it to the side. So
Yeah.
The muscle will feel a higher demand because I think
because levers and stuff.
Yeah, but the actual force of the muscle would be high.
Isaac Jackson. So Ali, do you have any kind of like examples? So if I was to say hamstrings to you, what kind of exercises can I do? Maybe with only body weight or with a band?
I mean, if you want to go all out, just do Nordics. I mean, I'd probably tear a hamstring, but like, I mean, you could do stuff like that. You know, even with bands, you know, I mean, I've had hamstring tendinopathies before, come in the clinic, and you know, literally just 2 TheraBands round one leg, anchor it somewhere, and get them to do a real good kind of prone hamstring contraction like that. That will really work them. And you know, even if me or you done them, you know, we're used to squatting heavy weights and deadlifting heavy weights, but you do them and you'll feel them all week. You know.
So that's interesting. So what constitutes a real good prone? Talk to me like I'm a patient and you're telling me how to do it. So how do we set up the band to start off with?
Well, you just anchor it, you know, further away from your ankle. Loop it around your ankle so that there's a downward kind of force from. So you know, if it bends up like that, there's a band coming that's pulling it out that way. Or just get someone to hold it. You know, if you've got someone in the house that can hold it, and just you know, lie on your front and bend your knee. You know, bring your foot to your bum.
Is there any particular thing I should be thinking about when I'm doing that? Any cueing?
Yeah, so
for that.
Well, you know, like for that one, just, you know, bring the foot close to your bum, hold for a second. You know, because I quite like that with a lot of the rehab style exercises and execution. You know, almost making it deliberate and really feel the contraction. And you know, one of the ways to do that is just nice, slow, and controlled when you're lifting up. You know, slow eccentric and a slight isometric hold when you're at that kind of transition point between the concentric and eccentric. I mean, that's a real good way to get people doing it right.
So
you know, when we're talking about basic exercises.
Talk to me about tempos here. So I'm on the concentric portion. What tempo am I aiming for?
Sorry, on the concentric.
Yeah. So on the lifting phase, what kind of tempo in seconds? If I have a metronome set at 60 BPM, are you asking me to do what pause? It doesn't have to be specific, just so people have like an actual quantifiable.
Just do 2 or 3 seconds up and a slightly slower tempo down, you know.
So 2 seconds up, 3 seconds down, maybe.
3-4 seconds down, yeah, with a deliberate pause in between. I mean,
how long to pause?
Truth be told, there's no set rules in anything.
Yeah, I know there's no set rules in anything, but you want to give people some kind of objective, actual quantifiable advice other than do some of this exercise.
Everything works. Just do something.
This. So like,
single leg. The single leg will make it harder. Like if you can't go heavier, going single leg will make it harder. Doing seated will make it harder as well. So. like sit on something that's high so your legs are floating about, so like a table or something. Anchor it the same way Ali says, and put it around your ankles, and now you do it as a seated leg curl.
And I can do both of them seated high. I can do extension and
Yeah, so
curl.
you can do it
I
as
can
a
both.
superset, then you'll be
Yeah.
set.
The only, I mean, I guess this is more a question for you, Mark, is the slight problem with these exercises is for sure you can work the muscle, and and while we can't get to the gyms, or all those who didn't prepare and get gym equipment can't get to the gyms.
Yeah, all the preparation time you had when Boris came on the TV on Monday and said, "Right, we're shut down, lads, as of now." Cheers for the cheers, CY. CY for motivation.
I can't even remember what I was saying now.
You're asking for all those who weren't prepared enough to have gym equipment, or those who.
Oh no, that was it. It was coordination. So the slight problem. Fair enough. While we can't get access to gym equipment, more isolation exercises to really work muscles and stuff like that. But one of the biggest problems is we train for compounds in lifting. It's big multi-joint exercises. So a huge component of getting good at these is coordination, balance. The skill of actually lifting it, and the isolation stuff isn't going to give you that. So what would you say from that point of view, Mark?
So the ways to look at this. We want to look at the physiological components that we can train. So we've spent a lot of time talking about hypertrophy training, which is probably one of the most important training adaptations we should be chasing. And for that, we should be looking at more of a mechanistic kind of isolation. Like looking at having quad exercises, having hamstring exercises, having chest exercises, having back exercises, bicep exercises, tricep exercises, trying to work the muscle with like minimum of 2 exercises, preferably in 2 different planes, and working it close to failure with a reasonable amount of volume 2 to 3 times a week is something we should absolutely be looking to do, because it's something we can actually use to actually get decent outcomes with. It's very realistic for pretty much anybody to be able to come out of this, unless you're like pumped full, unless you're Larry Wheels. It should be possible for you to gain some muscle size during this period. So Definitely. It's absolutely something that we should be looking to do. There's not something, if I had access to barbells and access to full gym equipment, it's not the kind of approach that I would advocate. It's something that I would advocate alongside of the actual compound training, the skill-based training, if it's a skill-based sport. But it's, at this minute in time, when we can have access to the tools of the trade, it's absolutely something we should be doing, because it's something that we can affect. We should also be looking at some kind of cardiovascular outcome, some kind of fitness training, if possible. It allows us basically to develop the hypertrophy and develop the conditioning-based muscular endurance, cardiovascular fitness. So when we do come to the gym, if I say to me or Ali, do a set of 10 squats, I'm doing 10s at the minute. If I do a set of 10 with 70, I'm gassed out. Not from the effort of doing a set of 10 squat, is the cardiovascular response to that. So in a situation where I can't train as normal, if I was to do some kind of cycling or some kind of cardiovascular output training, circuit training, whatever it is, I could maybe look at bringing in push-ups, pull-ups, things like this in a manner that's maybe less focused towards actual hypertrophy outcome, more focused towards a circuit training conditioning outcome. But I could basically come into the next phase of training fitter and bigger than any other phase of training before I've ever come into. So I have a larger muscle, so I have my force potential is higher. My force production won't be higher because I haven't trained that specific outcome, but my potential due to my larger muscles, my larger cross-sectional area, combined with the fact that I'm actually fitter, is going to mean that I can actually train harder than before, because I'm going to be fitter. And because I'm going to be bigger, I also have a chance to actually smash past plateaus that I've had in the past. So it's actually an opportunity for people to, although it's not like the ideal training environment, is actually an opportunity for you to work on 2 aspects that with the hypertrophy aspect we may work on, and some programs do prioritize that. Powerlifting programs, not weightlifting programs or strongman programs, but some powerlifting programs will actually take time out to just train on that specifically. And it's not really something I advocate. It's not really something I think's really great, but it's some programs do that. But not a lot of programs will work on the conditioning element, but it is actually something that we do work on the conditioning element when we do set to 10, when we do kind of limited sets, when we do volume phases, when we do hypertrophy phases, we work on lifting specific fitness, which allows us to handle more volumes, have a higher work capacity for when we go into a strength training phase. So we can actually train with higher volumes, recover from higher volumes, which leads to greater strength. Well, theoretically leads to greater strength gains at the RN. When it comes to the actual skill specific point of it, when it comes to weightlifting, if we have a broomstick, there's shitloads of stuff we can do. We can do overhead squats, we can do drop snatches, muscle snatches, tempo lifts. We can learn how to move with a low load. And it's something we can do in powerlifting as well. There's no reason we can't have a broomstick, run through a set of 10 squat on a tempo, say a 5 seconds down, 2 second pause, 5 seconds up, practice the cueing, practice grip on the floor, practice bracing, move through the positions. If we can squat perfectly with a broomstick, hitting all the positions we want to, when we go back to actually squatting, it is possible for us to actually make gains in our motor skill. Same with bench press, although bench press is a bit more difficult, but you have a bed, so you can kind of simulate it. Something you can work on for bench press might be just floor press with a broomstick, just being able to kind of get into position, retract the shoulder blades better, have a better thoracic extension, maybe set yourself up to actually be able to arch better, have a better co-contraction with the muscles of the back and the chest. So when we're moving, we can move our scap better. We can keep everything in place. We're not winging out with the elbows. We can put a force into the bar better. With deadlift, the same kind of things. We can practice all the cueing. So we can learn what it actually means to create a brace. So when we roll and tuck at the pelvis, bring the rib cage down, kind of bring that together, learn how to contract with the abdominals, brace there, so we can move, let the hips and the knees move while the core braces and acts as a conduit towards the barbell. So there is actually stuff we can do around that. It won't be the most exciting training possible, but for a lot of people, it will actually be quite beneficial for them. And it's something you can use as a warm-up. So if we're doing, say we're doing a lower body hypertrophy session. So we got sissy squat, pistol squat, skater squat. Maybe we got hamstring walkouts. We got hamstring curls with a TheraBand. Maybe we got like glute bridges as our 3 kind of posterior chain exercises. Maybe we got some BFR at the end of the session. Maybe we're doing like 2 exercises, a couple of protocols on that. Maybe as a warm-up, we could do 5 seconds down, 2 second pause, 5 seconds up on squat, bench, and deadlift as a circuit, doing sets of 3, sets of 5 with a broomstick, and really focusing on our cueing, our internal cueing, video it, kind of review it. So there's actually quite a lot around that aspect that we can utilize. Obviously, we're not going to get the sport-specific adaptation that we'd want in those sports, but there are opportunities for us to kind of work on skill deficits as well. So yeah, there's opportunities to work around that kind of stuff. And it's a good opportunity for me. This kind of situation is a good opportunity to kind of think outside the box a bit. It's quite, when we have a gym that's well kitted, so like our gym, it can actually be quite easy to kind of get caught in boxes. I know I'm very good at getting caught in a box, so I just see what's in the 4 walls, and that's what we end up using. But as soon as we get a new bit of kit, it's like, all right, we can do this, we can do that. So a lot of programs are dictated by the kit that's available, and we can get lazy as well. So we do a powerlifting program. We do competition squat, competition bench, and a competition deadlift, and that's it. Maybe with a couple of the odd exercise here and there, when in fact we're not really testing our skill. We're not pushing our skill outside of our comfort zone. So everyone is outside of the comfort zone right now. So because we're all outside of our comfort zone right now, it's actually a good opportunity to kind of explore areas and potential deficits in your own training. So there is kind of opportunity around that.
Yeah, what are your weaknesses? Yeah, definitely. I think that's like how many people losing time from the goal is like getting injured. So I think this is very common. I've seen it myself. I've seen it myself. I've seen it around. If you put a goal in 1 year to deadlift 200 kg, for example, getting injured will be one of the worst things you can do to step away from your goal. So using this time to work on stuff that you had or nibbling and you never did, I think will be.
Yeah, I don't do short-term goals anymore.
It's not that short term. 1 year ago, is it? 1 year later, it's not that short term.
I want to max out before the end of the year. Oh no!
Are you training for the Olympics? Do you have a 4-year cycle?
We had Ali had a what year was that, Ali? Was that like 2000?
That was a couple of years back now. That was pre-physio days.
Was that 2015? That was 2015, wasn't it?
Oh, I can't remember.
It was 2015 and 2016. And basically, Ali had a really good run of training. He's like smashing PBs on everything.
Yeah.
Lists were actually kind of getting pretty serious. As we're all
must have been like serious. October-ish or so, and then
I think you'd squatted 330 for 4, is that right, or for 3 or something like that?
3.
Yeah, and deadlifted 320 for 6, right?
Yeah.
No, 320. It would have been 320 for 5 then, because 320 for 6 was more recent.
And then, what were you? You were benching close to 220 at the time. Like, were you setting bench PBs as well at the time? I think you were, weren't you?
Oh, I don't remember that. Yeah.
You don't remember bench PBs? You know, you only bench 220, so it's shit.
I benched 220 and then just like. It's like, oh, we'll just not get better at bench anymore.
That's me.
Stick to squat and deadlift.
It's getting hit.
I still destroyed your dream though, so that's the main thing. I did it first.
Yeah, I got 500 pounds before you, so that's fine.
I guess.
What was I going to say? Yeah, so basically you had a really good run of training, but then you had like this kind of reoccurring back pain that was kind of plagued the back end of that year.
Yeah, and I wasn't a physio at this point, so I didn't know what was going on.
You were physio in training at this point.
First year doesn't count. Like we literally just study anatomy.
Yeah, so I'd be basically trying to get Ali to take some time off, like 2-3 weeks off, and I was getting told no, send me this program, send me this program, send me this program. So I sent him the program, and then basically he was really struggling to get through sessions. We're having to adapt training on the fly a lot, and basically it was coming up towards Christmas. And Ali had wanted to like squat 350 and deadlift 360 before the end of the year, because you have to do stuff before the end of the calendar year because reasons.
I don't do that anymore. Like I learned my lesson from that.
And Ali kind of like came and picked me up when we went to the gym. The whole car journey to the gym, I was saying to Ali, like, this is not a good idea. You should maybe think about not doing this.
You literally noceboed me. Like
he was like, no,
placebo.
Nocebo, it's different. So placebo is you think something will work when it won't. Nocebo it's like you'll think something might harm you when it won't, and you get effects from that. It's the opposite.
Oh, so I caused your injury then?
Yeah.
What happened? What was the injury?
We don't know for sure because you need a scan to work this one out. But basically, I got a physio session with someone Mark knew who worked at Scottish Rugby Union, and he suspected it was stress fractures in the lower back. Stress fractures you can't diagnose without an X-ray, so we don't know 100% that that's what it was. But basically, that's the assumption we went on. I followed the rehab advice, and my back got better. So,
I mean, yeah, it kind of worked. Whether it was correct or not, the advice worked. Anyway,
that's an interesting thing about physio. Like, for certain things, the diagnosis isn't. Physio is kind of in some respects moving away from diagnoses. It depends on the condition. Some things you do kind of need to diagnose so that you can give people an expectation of what's going wrong, because if they don't have an expectation and it's something that's going to take 2 years, like frozen shoulder, like a year and a half, 2 years to get better, they're not going to stay doing physio for 2 years if they don't think it's getting better. So you kind of have to tell people that's what it is.
I want to be up on my ankle later, so don't tell me 2 years.
But with some of them,
5 years for ankle.
But some of the more general things, like some shoulder issues, some knee, like shoulder, for example. Let's take that. So there's loads of diagnoses that you can do with a shoulder. Let's ignore some of the pathological type things like frozen shoulder and things like that. you know, the problem with the shoulder is that there were so many terms of what could go wrong with it before, like subacromial pain syndrome, bursitis, tendonitis, whatever. You know, and diagnosing these things was a real, you know, it's real complex charts to work out which one's which. And you know, the problem is research was coming out that even the most skilled clinicians couldn't accurately diagnose one from the other. Like, you know, the best clinicians might get it wrong a lot of the time. You know, not all the time, but, you know, a rather large percentage of the time they would misdiagnose it and think that a bursitis was, you know, a tendonitis or whatever. And it doesn't matter, like because the way that you manage it would be the same anyway. So, you know, you're looking at the strength of it, the range of motion, the load, and you manage these things, and then it gets better. So, a lot of these conditions, the various things that I mentioned for the shoulder, they're now getting more umbrella terms. Like, so all these ones that I mentioned now kind of come under the term of rotator cuff related shoulder pain. So, you know, all these various things come under that umbrella now. And, you know, the problem with diagnosing things is you can make it worse for certain people. So, you know, a lot of people come to physio for a specific diagnosis, and sometimes that works super well. You know, they know what's wrong, they know what they have to do, and they get better. But the problem is, and we would probably have to go into what the biopsychosocial model is, which you mentioned in one of your Instagram posts recently. But, you know, to summarize it just now, basically you can't just treat physical things from a pure kind of, you know, mechanical or biological point of view, because the problem with a lot of, you know, pains, especially chronic pains, is there's more factors. You know, so the biopsychosocial model is, in essence, you know, it's got elements of biology, psychology, and kind of social, environmental kind of facets. And basically, you have to fix all of these to fix people's pain. So, you know, a problem that happens in the fitness kind of world, in the way that people think, is they only think from a biomechanical point of view. And if somebody's in pain, and you know, you know, say somebody's got loads of mental health problems, as an example, they're depressed, you know, whatever, and they come to you with back pain. You know, most of the time you can't fix the back pain unless you address the factors of the mind that are surrounding the back pain. So with back pain, you know, people tend to worry about it kind of to a much higher extent than it needs to be worried about, and they have a lot of fears and things like that. And there's a lot of research that shows you have to address these things to improve the problem. If you don't, it literally doesn't matter what you do from a physical point of view, they won't get better. So, and I totally forgot, I was going to wheel this around and come back to where I was, but the problem is my brain just goes out and then crashes. Yeah.
Blue screen of death.
Yeah, yeah, my brain does that. So, you know, you've got now information that I'm not going to be able to link back to what I was originally saying.
So, yeah, no, I think like what I want to say before in this whole injury thing is that you can use this time to treat any nagging injuries like you could use to stop your back from exploding when Mark was telling you to. So, you know, growing pain is something that comes and goes. Do exercise to remove your hip flexor pain, stretching, you know, all this stuff that when you go back to the gym will reduce your risk of injury.
Oh, I remembered.
And you make you better for your sport.
We'll go back to Ali segue.
Yeah, so it was on diagnoses. So you know, the problem is, you know, with some people, basically, if you give them a specific diagnosis, it can make things worse. And you kind of have to read the person to know whether you should be a bit more generic and you just need to strengthen it up a bit, get it moving a bit, you'll be fine. You know, sometimes you have to give people just information like that because it doesn't worry them. Because if you think that their pain is driven from a more kind of psychosocial kind of driver, you have to calm them down or they won't get better from a physical point of view. So you know, what you would do with that is if you give them a specific diagnosis, the first thing they're going to do is Google it, and then it's going to be doomsday. You know, so
Down 5 days.
yeah, so you know, sometimes you have to read the person, and the problem with a lot of this stuff is, you know, I never believed any of this before I started. You know, before I kind of went down the physio route, like I was very, you know, everything's physiological. There's, you know, mindset doesn't really matter. You know, but it's not true, and especially with chronic pain. You know, from my, and I suppose we can go into it if you're interested, but I would say for chronic pain, you know, depending on how it's driven, because there's different types of chronic pain, without making this boring and going extremely into pain mechanisms. But, you know, a lot of chronic pains, you know, I'm going to go out on a limb and just say it, but like I think a lot of them are driven either from mental health or, you know, the way people are thinking, stuff like that, and obesity. I couldn't believe when I kind of went in and saw a lot of the problems that were coming to you in an outpatient clinic. Like I could not believe these things were such big factors. Like you know, if we go into both of them, obesity, for example, you know, we all know the problems obesity causes in terms of health problems. And you know, without even going into the medical side of things, just from a musculoskeletal point of view, I couldn't believe the difference it makes. So, you know, joint replacements as an example. So joint replacements are fundamentally done, you know, when joints are arthritic and they get to a point where they're just painful all the time, so you replace them. It doesn't really fix the function, it more fixes the pain. So, you know, something with these is the stats depend on the country. In America, they're predicted up to like 80%, and you know, probably more likely research is stuff that comes out from New Zealand and Australia, which says it's maybe about 33%-ish of all joint replacements are unnecessary if people make lifestyle changes. So, you know, something that commonly I see with people who come in with knee or hip osteoarthritis is, you know, like that totally get crippled by it. A lot of them are overweight, and you know, they go to their doctor and they say, you know, the doctor just is very blunt with them because they don't kind of go into how to fix it and things. They just say lose weight. And, you know, a lot of people won't make lifestyle changes, so they would prefer to have a joint replacement anyway and go through surgery. But of the people that, you know, the two biggest things for joint replacements, as an example, are lose weight and strengthen the joint up. Those are the two biggest things you can do. So, you know, even a tiny bit of strengthening for a few weeks makes a huge difference to these people. But see when you get the ones that lose weight, even if it's a little bit, like just a couple stone, and you know, they're still like 18 stone or something, but they lose a couple stone, they strengthen it up a bit. All of a sudden they go from absolutely crippled and limping and, you know, in pain all the time to being totally fine. You know, some people obviously have to lose a bit more weight, strengthen it up a bit more, but it was the stark difference. Like I mean, you know, we all know what the benefits of exercise and things, but when it gets shoved in your face, it's just crazy.
Are you trying to make Mark lose more weight? Or?
Well,
it's literally what I'm trying to do. Fucking terribly.
Well, see, this is something I thought about. Like I'm genuinely not sure the answer, because you know, you see the effects of it that happens to a lot of these people. You know, and it's unreal that even the musculoskeletal issues that it causes people to get in chronic pain and things, and when they lose weight, you know, it gets better. Well, something that I thought is, you know, whether we like it or not, 2 out of the 3 of us are classified as obese. Like,
yeah, Giannis and Ali, you guys are a fucking disgrace.
Yeah, so
I'm Caribbean, I like it.
But you know what my point is you know, the 2 biggest factors for these, from an arthritic point of view, if we will, is strengthening the joint up and losing weight. So
yeah, but I mean,
you know,
the mountain is obese as
really
well.
strong. we're really strong, but we're also overweight. So
yeah, but your ligaments and your tendons are also strong. So like the mountain is obese as well, but he doesn't have problems because
yeah,
they're
but we're
equally
young
strong.
and we're young enough though. Like, what's going to happen? You know, I'm not sure. Like this is
Yeah,
what I'm
yeah,
interested in, because there's obviously studies that show lifters have some of the best joint health out of all
yeah, exactly.
athletes. But was that research done on lifters who weren't in the supers? Who knows? So I'm not really sure. But basically, I've got the personal theory of, if you're kind of a super, you realistically probably by the time you're 40 need to start losing weight, and then every 10 years after that you need to start losing more. Like,
Yeah.
That,
Assuming
that's what
like
that's what I think I'm going to go off. But
Yeah, I
anyway.
think that's probably a good thing to do. I think I don't think you want to be a super into your 60s. I think that's a good idea.
Well, see something that I noticed, so when you work with older people, and it's interesting. So you might see a lot of older people who are in their 80s, 90s, and they've got a fair bit of body fat, but they're not heavy. They might only be kind of 70, 80 kilos with a fair bit of body fat, but you don't see like 90-year-olds who weigh 120 kilos. Like, it just, so you don't, like, you
It's a
don't.
fair point.
the heart will have died first, so the heart will be like, I'm out of here.
So
I think like in because you mentioned weight loss, something like, for example, I also thought maybe get a bit more ripped during.
Yeah, I
during
think
this
I think
training.
the other two kind of main outcomes we can have is kind of like working on injuries, and like hopefully you have some kind of strategy for that injury, ideally from a physiotherapist, with exercises and things you can do around it. Normally I recommend you do 25 minutes of exercise 25 times a day. So
yeah.
for
Well, I
Ali's
mean,
protocols, you don't really have
it depends.
you don't have any excuse. But also when it comes to nutrition, I know a lot of people will be utilizing this time to kind of go off the rails a bit. But if you can't, like, you're literally living in your house and you have your kitchen, you have your fridge and everything beside you. So if you can't use this time now to kind of be a bit more regimented in your diet, then when we go back to having the time pressures of life,
Yeah, I mean,
how are you going to do it then?
I think it depends on who you're talking to. So I think that would be a good idea for, let's say, amateur lifters who have excess body fat. But I don't think it would be a good idea for more intermediate or more advanced lifters uh, who don't have that excess fat for their class. Or, even if they do, putting your body through a calorie deficit in a period of where you don't have a lot of resistance will make the process of like maintaining your muscle much harder. That I think that but just by doing push-ups or bodyweight exercises and then putting yourself in a calorie deficit, maybe will cause you to lose the hard-earned muscle that you
Not
gained over
necessarily.
years.
If your protein content is high enough and you're doing resistance training exercise, you're not going to lose a lot of muscle. Not unless you're in a severe calorie deficit. As long as you're not,
This kind of links into a little bit of the stuff you put on Instagram the other day. So that biopsychosocial approach. So we're very good in the fitness kind of side of things, of just looking at things from a biological point of view. And I truly didn't believe in this stuff before I started rehab. Like, I thought it was nonsense. So but there's so many people that I've seen, because this more goes on to the mental health kind of side of things and things like that, and the way that you think, not necessarily full on diagnosed issues, but even the way that you think. So I'm kind of bunging that all in there. But like frankly, when I do rehab at the gym, it's on easy mode, because a lot of the time they don't really have the psychosocial issues that are there around the issues. They just got a little bit of a pain from lifting and they want to get better. So I give them a little bit of stuff to do and they just get better. But when you're in the clinic and you're particularly back pains, back's the worst thing for this. You get a lot of people very worried about back pain because there's a lot of false beliefs out there, and that drives the pain. So literally you can have two people with the exact same physical presentation. One's not worried about it and one's terrified about it. You'd give them the exact same stuff. The guy who's not worried about it gets better. The guy that's worried about it doesn't. And you have to address the mind kind of issues and all these kind of factors, or they just don't get better. So, the biopsychosocial model, you can look it up. It obviously has the biological aspects. So you've got a tear in your muscle, or you've got arthritis, or something like that. But the psychological element is, probably one of the bigger ones for how it actually affects you. So, back pain, again, the worst one. So many people come in and it's driven by so many different things that come under these facets. And something that was interesting that kind of I looked up is, there's a lot of physios that believe, and I'm not going to pronounce this word right, that a lot of the conditions that are causing people extreme pain and they're struggling with are iatrogenic. I think that's how you pronounce it, but basically what iatrogenic means is relating to illness caused by medical examination or treatment. So, probably one of the biggest one is back pain. So, something that's happened in the kind of rehab world, led by, I'm not even going to go into that because I'll rant for 3 hours, but, basically people have got an instilled sense of fragility with their back. They think that their back's really weak when the reality is it's one of the strongest things in their body. And healthcare professionals might say, from GPs to physios in the past to chiropractors and all these sorts of things, there's been this kind of, you have to take it easy, don't push it, your disc will pop out, which it won't. And that makes people panic with the back.
Well, if I put enough tension on it, if I put like 60 tons of pressure on your spine, it might pop.
Well, yeah, but we're not going to do that. But anyway, the point is, like that sort of thinking, that goes into the mindset of things, and it leads to kind of poor efficacy and self-efficacy and all that sort of stuff, and people just don't get better.
So when you say poor efficacy and self-efficacy, what do you mean?
Well, like the power to kind of manage your condition and get better and things like that, actually improve.
Yeah, that's fine. I just want, you have to assume that people don't know the big ones.
So like something that physio should at least try to do, if you're seeing a proper one, is kind of improve yourself.
Like Ali, who's a proper physio, and other physios.
No, because there's even
link in bio.
I mean, we can go.
This is basically Ali's using this as a sales pitch for his 6-week back cure.
Not really. I don't have a 6-week back cure.
Not yet.
99.99 pounds. Are you getting this back to the weight loss or?
No, I'm just talking generally about things that kind of people hang up.
Well, can you kind of like it back to the weight loss so it end up with a 3-hour podcast you talking about back pain? Which we can do an episode on that. We will do an episode on that.
All right, so we're not going to talk about that just now.
Well, we can. I mean, it's quite interesting saying what you're saying. Continue to talk.
Well, yeah. Like it's just a mindset element that comes with it. Like you have to address that, or the people don't get better.
Let's bring it back around because what you're saying is like interesting and relevant.
Exactly.
So when we're talking about Ali, when we're talking about something like the body composition related goal, kind of what would you?
Right. So this is what I was getting to. So so obviously you need to work out where somebody's pain's driven from. Is it kind of nociceptive, which is regular kind of pain that's associated with tissue healing and stuff? Is it driven from psychosocial factors, aka up here, or is it kind of environmental factors or whatever? So you have to work out what the driving factor is to the pain. And so, with a lot of back pain, it's all psychosocial driven a lot of the time. But, every injury, every true, kind of biological injury where, somebody, it's associated with tissue healing and stuff, to an extent, there's a psychosocial element. You know, I've not met anyone yet who's in pain and, you know, they've got an injury that isn't worried about it and it doesn't play on their mind. But obviously that's normal, and, you know, you can calm them down and control it really easily, and it's not gone wild and they've not gone kind of driven by the psychosocial factors, and that's why they're in pain. So, you know, everybody gets that to an extent, you know, with kind of your regular sort of pain. And I think what you were saying the other day, which is a good point, you know, stuff like weight loss, although for sure in weight loss there's a biological component to that, and you will get weaker if you lose enough weight. There's not, you know, you just will. There's a good chance there's a psychosocial element to that as well. You know, like, I'm definitely guilty for that. I lose a couple of kilos and it's like I'm getting lighter, you know, I'm going to lose strength, and then, you know,
I'm gonna eat a kg of cheese before I do the squat workout.
yeah, exactly. So
a pizza between sets, and then complains my tummy hurts.
you know what I mean? So, you know, there possibly is kind of psychosocial elements to these
things. There's no psychosocial element on whether you lose muscle tissue. You don't control it.
Yeah, for sure.
No, there is absolutely there is. If I'm setting out with the premise, so if me and you go on a 500 calorie deficit, and you go out with the premise that you can't train as hard, you're not going to get stronger, you're not going to get bigger, you're going to lose muscle tissue, and I go out with the premise that I can get stronger, I can get bigger, and I'm going to lose fat, the quality of our training is going to be drastically different.
It's
my motivation is going to be high, your motivation is going to be low. I could push, like, a lot of pushing the failure is a lot of strength gain, a lot of training outcome is your ability to push your muscle to voluntary failure, or push yourself voluntary, so to overcome in muscle inhibitors like Golgi tendons, muscle spindles, things like that. So a lot of the neurological benefit from strength training comes purely from your ability to inhibit those responses.
We'll see that.
If I'm going out with the premise that I can't get bigger, I can't get stronger, I'm not going to push as hard, and because I'm not going to push as hard, my training outcomes aren't going to be as good.
Yeah, we'll see. That's what I thought. I mean, I've worked in mental health physio before, on one of my rotations in the past, and that was super interesting for working out some of this kind of stuff, because you see, you know, in physio you see stuff at the acute level. You see stuff at the performance level being a strength and conditioning coach, but I truly believe they're on the same scale. The scale is movement and function. I work at the low-level rehab end, and you work at the high-end performance end, but it's a scale. That's the way that I see it.
I'm on the same belief. You know, I think we both do the same thing. We just work with different populations.
Yeah, like you know, I spoke to a specialist, kind of advanced practitioner in back pain, actually. And he, you know, I was asking him a lot of things about physio, and he said this, which I really really resonated with me. He said
it really resonated with me.
Yeah.
Right in my special place.
Yeah. So you know, basically what he said is he thought physio was kind of it was just two elements, and I agree with this. Pretty much, you're kind of a specialized personal trainer who specializes in dealing with things at the level of injury, you know, with injuries and, you know, stuff like that, and, you know, improving performance from that way, you know, various aspects, mixed in with a lifestyle coach. That's really what it is. I mean, you know, I think there's, sorry physios if you're watching, but I think there's a little bit of an arrogance in the physio profession, a little bit, as to
a little bit. Have you fucking met physios?
Well,
jumped up.
Yeah, I meet them every day, but like I think there's a little bit of arrogance in it as to how, you know, skillful we are, what we actually do. Like, we do an important job, but like I think people like it to be more special than it is. You know, I like what I do. You know, I like you know, you just encourage people to, you know, show them it's okay, give them a bit of education, and, you know, you get them a bit stronger. And that's fundamentally the stuff that works. Like, a lot of this nonsense, like massage, manipulation, it's not got an evidence base. And, you know, basically all manual therapy does, which is, you know, anything where somebody's put their hands on you, or, you know, whatever. Basically all the evidence base for all this stuff, massage, manipulation, ultrasound, any of this weird stuff, all it does is short-term
my
pain relief.
balls.
It doesn't fix anything. You know, it's a gimmick. You know, there's, you know, they think it kind of stimulates the nervous system a bit and makes you feel a bit better, but it doesn't fix anything. And you know,
it's still an elite sport, though.
But see, I suppose what you could, you know, there's some physios who say when things are in the acute phase, you know, if something's just been injured, the manual therapy stuff can be beneficial. And I suppose maybe they have a point. Like you know, on one hand, they maybe have a point. You know, basically, if it feels better for a short time, because it's short-term pain relief, it doesn't fix anything. But if you've got a pain that's really quite sore because you've just done it, or a pain that's going to last a short time anyway, then yeah, I guess technically it could use that. It didn't fix it; it got better on its own. But while you had it, it felt better.
Well, you basically, there's no way looking at it. You can look at it from like, if it improves muscle function, then it improves your training capacity. So there was a big fight between the head of medical and the players about massage on a Wednesday. So Wednesday would be our day off, and we would advocate some kind of active recovery. But there was massage put on in the morning for players, and there was kind of a to and fro in between it coming out of the medical budget. The head of medical didn't see it as a benefit, so he didn't want it coming out of his budget.
Yeah, because there's no research.
The players wanted it because they believed that it helped.
Well, yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to get on.
It ended up coming to the point where the players subsidized the massage because it was important for them for their training.
Well, see, this is the problem. You know, like I done a lot of research into this, and placebos and nocebos are actually extremely powerful. In the short term, placebos have been shown to have the same effect as drugs in the short term. You know, it's really strong. So, you know, I think that's why stuff like, you know, these, let's talk about something crazy, like, you know, the preachers who go like, Jesus will save you and all this crazy stuff. Like if you were noceboed into thinking something was wrong with you, you know, you'll start to get effects thinking, oh, something's wrong with me, and you'll start to get, you know, symptoms, things. But then you could be placeboed to be better again. You know, I think that's maybe elements of the kind of rehab science that maybe that's why that sort of thing's around, you know, because the people who are there believe it.
I think there's kind of like there's training science, if you want to call it, that's starting to wake up to this. I think it's kind of like going to be the biggest development. I think in the next kind of decade or two is going to be how to integrate these kind of factors into.
Well, yeah, I think that. Yeah. So yeah, I was going to make another point on the manual therapy stuff, but I can't remember. In my
right,
brain.
Rather than bagging on manual therapy, we can do this on our own. Let's wheel us around to what we're actually talking about, which is, you know, the current situation and what we can do around it. So we've talked about.
I didn't think that was what the podcast was even about. That it just kind of turned into that as we went.
So well, it was kind of early attention. So we've talked about the hypertrophy training, the benefits of that. We've talked around some of the rehab stuff, what we could work on. The specifics of that, you'll need guidance.
Well, I've got an idea then, like based on what we were just talking about and going on that, because we talked about this before. So basically, you know, I swear I'll come off this. So we've obviously been talking about the psychosocial elements, and I obviously see things at the low end, and you see things at the high end. So something we talked about before, and I've never looked into this. And if you had have asked me a few years ago, what do you think of this stuff, I would have said, absolute nonsense. But you were talking about like the mind skills things, which in effect is psychology at the high level of sport. You know, that's really what it is from what I'm aware. I've not looked into it, but you know, we were talking about this a couple of days ago because we were talking, well, a couple of weeks ago now. Yeah, it was weeks ago. We were talking about this, and you were talking about how this all fits in with this. So what's, you know, I guess that's something you could do in lockdown because I'm guessing you can do mind skills and things with these people because they'll be able to do it online.
Yeah, without question. So visualization is nothing new to performance sport. They've been using it for decades. So it's a big thing around lifting you can do. So you can, so in competition preparation, a big thing is for a lot of people is handling the pressure that they put on themselves or the coach puts on them or performance anxiety. So a big thing for handling that is to actually try and take 10, maybe even 5 minutes to imagine walking in to the competition hall, the weigh in, getting your weight on point, weight's easy, moving through to the warm-up area, getting your rack, like going through everything in as much vivid detail as possible and going through the steps, like imagining putting your hands on the bar, getting under the bar how you would, taking it up, what's it feel like, stepping back, like going through the steps of performance right up to the point of actual performance, like taking your opener on the platform and doing that in like a rest day, or doing that. You can even do it in between sets. You're sitting there for 5 minutes, sitting down, resting between sets. You can imagine the next set. What's the kind of the setup going to be like? What's going to feel like on your back? What's the execution going to be like? So there is mental cueing and mental skill sets. And there's a guy that I've used before, as a sports psychologist with Institute of Sport for a few.
You should definitely interview him, because I can give you little bits of this at the level of recap, but that'd be interesting.
So what I want to do with this is to get people on the show, to interview them on the show with specialties within sport.
Can I be the Johnny Bravo of this podcast?
The Johnny Bravo is the fat Italian guy.
You know, the guy who just goes on Joe Rogan and talks nonsense every couple of episodes.
Yeah, that'll be you, but you just talk about rehab. So anyway, so if we can wheel this back around and then kind of tie it up. So we've talked about the hypertrophy side of things. We've talked about some of the rehab stuff. We talked about some of the execution. We've talked about some of the methods we can use. So just kind of to wheel it around on some of the body composition goals. Does anyone else want? Yanis, you want to have a word on this?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to ask you actually. So, as you said, now you're trying to lose a bit of weight.
No, I tried once and I gave up. Like I tried a couple of years ago.
Mark.
I tried a couple of years ago. Went all in and basically just ate bread, and then went to the gym, had no energy, and was like, I don't like this anymore. I think I lasted like 3 days, and then.
But don't talk about back pain. He's asking me a question.
It wasn't back pain; it was weight loss.
You were segueing into back pain. I know how you work.
Well,
no, it wasn't. I just had no energy.
So, like, would you continue? Would you do this like weight cut that you do if you didn't have a bar at your home and the same weights? Because now, like, what I can see from your training is you're still training almost as you were before. So if you just had
that was the intention, right from the intention, right when I had no weight, didn't know I was going to get weight, the intention was to cut.
Okay.
Basically for me, so I basically I'm kind of past where I should be. I think around 108. 108 for me is like in my head as a good weight for me, because I've set a lot of PBs are close to the current PBs I have at that weight. I've surpassed them a bit at like 10 kilos heavier body weight, but not by so much that the 10 kilos I think is functional. So I think if I was to come down to like 110, 108 and kind of sit at that weight, that's a good weight for me. And that's kind of like where I would rather do my training. I feel
my point is that if you didn't have the same training stimulus.
Absolutely. Because I could still do body weights, I could still do pull-ups, I could still do press-ups, I could still do lunges. Like I can still train with enough intensity that I can keep the muscle mass that I have. 100% certain on that. And I'm not like, I might lose a bit of back mass potentially, because it was pretty difficult to do any kind of back training where I was. I didn't have a pull-up bar. But I managed
exactly. Like in my point of view, it's harder to pull muscle than lose fat. So, like I don't know. All I'm trying to say is for some people, especially maybe those on the hard gainer side of things, it might be wise to not sacrifice the muscle that it builds.
It needs to be relative to your situation. So I'm not saying everyone get leaner. Like if you're skinny, it might be an opportunity to eat in a slight like surplus while you're doing this kind of training. So it's relative to the goal, but body composition goals doesn't mean get leaner. Body composition goals can mean get fatter.
Definitely, yeah.
It's a change in body composition, so it's an opportunity. So kind of what I was more talking towards was it's an opportunity for people. So a lot of the excuses we get are down to lifestyle factors. So my own excuses is that I'm never home. I'm in the gym for 14 hours a day, 5 days a week. I'm there Saturday and Sunday. I don't have a kitchen at the gym. So for me, it's like my excuse.
Microwave.
For my excuse, I do actually have a kitchen. That was a lie. But for my own excuse is that like I work a lot. I'm away from the kitchen a lot. I can't cook the way I would like to cook, so I like eat a lot of takeaways. But it's just laziness, if I'm being honest. But my excuses are this and that and the other thing. Whereas in this scenario, I have a kitchen and I can access it anytime I want. I can go to the shops, which are like 20 minutes away, buy any food I want. So if I can't get, well, the only things I have to concentrate on right now are kind of the admin side of work, my own training, surviving, but also diet. Like if I can't manage to have the outcome in this environment, then when I go to like the environment of which Ali is in, which is actually working and actually, you know, being a member of society, hashtag NHS hero, like what chance do I have when I go back to that?
It's not the NHS, it's the other free at the point of
Oh
entry.
yeah, the free at the point of entry.
So no, especially I think like it's not only about body composition goals. It might be as actually like as you said, nutrition goals in general. So for me, something that was a weakness nutritionally, like especially as a skinny guy that will like was eating like tons of food. So
I literally had Ferrero Rochers as part of breakfast this morning.
goals.
Just putting that there.
Yeah, like you know, in the past 5 years, I've put on like 25 kg, so 22 kg. So I always like in this process neglected, you know, like quality food or micronutrient dense food, vegetables and all that. So I'm using this time to try and eat more healthy, like more vegetables, more micros, because I also think like vitamin and micro deficiencies can have an effect in our performance. So I think it was something that had to do with me. I was dizzy many times, you know, so I'm using this time to try and fix that for myself. So I think people can make these kind of changes as well that they see and they affect them in the training and they always neglect them because of the excuses that you said.
Yeah. So it's a good opportunity to focus on a nutrition-based goal, whether it's got body composition or quality of diet or whatever it is. It's an opportunity for us to actually have time, energy, and effort to put into that side, and it's something else we can focus on. A lot of people are spending a lot of time cooking, they're baking, they spend a lot of time in the kitchen. There's a time sink, so it's an opportunity for people to kind of engage with that.
Exactly.
Okay, so I think
although what was quite interesting is
oh my god,
like at the workplace that is free at the point of entry that's not right now.
that provides an essential service of which we will not speak.
Yeah, we're getting free Domino's pizza and Krispy Kreme every single day.
You say they were chucking it out because they had too much, right?
Oh yeah. Well, no, I don't know if I can even say that. The contribution was very well received.
TY Domino's, TY Krispy
Kreme.
heroes appreciate it.
All views are my own. I don't represent anything other than myself.
I bought a new car. Thank you.
TY.
Although some people were eating them every day, I think a lot got sick of them, but some people were finding that glorious.
I don't know if I'm gonna do that the next time, but I want to talk about, like, you know, as we said for BFR, I want to talk about isometrics, but maybe next time.
Well, you can speak about isometrics now while you're on it.
Okay.
I thought we were talking about rehab. We need to do that next time because I genuinely thought this was about rehab.
No, Ali, we spoke at the start. This is talking about training during the time.
Yeah,
it's just rehab's your specialty, and you know rehab's an element to this.
No, like the thing is, right? You've done
Ali, you've had more than enough.
Okay, so I want to say that I'm gonna get nerdy very quickly. I'm not gonna say the word psychosocial, I promise. But I'm gonna say it really quick. So you know, it's the size principle. So we're lifting up a weight until failure, and we're recruiting first the slow twitch fibers, and these get tired, and then we recruit the largest, bigger, fast twitch fibers. And from a hypertrophy point of view, so if we want to get bigger, we want to recruit these fast twitch fibers because these are the ones that grow more. These are the ones that make you look hand. So that should be the training of our goal when we're training for hypertrophy. So the point is that we cannot do that at home. One way to do that is by lifting heavy weights. So if you don't have heavy weights, you can't do that at home. The other point is to reach actual muscular failure. So by doing that, you're fatiguing the slow twitch fibers, and then you're making actually the fast twitch do the work, and you damage these fibers, and then you grow. So one of the I think one of the best ways you can do that at home is by doing isometrics. So let's take the shoulder side raise, for example. I've been doing it with a band at home because the lightest dumbbell I have is 15 kg, and I can't side raise that. Sad boys hours. So what I do is I take my roommate and he holds my hands in the extension position of the side raise, in the top position, and I voluntarily actually try and push for 20 seconds of maximal effort in isometrically, so without moving my arms. So he's pushing my arms down and my arms stay at the same position, but I'm exerting a maximum effort towards there. So if I do that about 20 seconds before I get into my actual set, what I do is I make the slow twitch fibers more tired. And that means that when I get into my set, I can actually reach failure quicker and and you actually use the fast twitch fibers to lift the weight. And I think that will be a very good way to add that to your routine. Definitely. If you have minimum weight at home, you should try that out. Definitely reach failure. It'll be a potent stimulus, I think.
Naturally, you're going to need a partner for that, though, or something that's stuck fastened to the ground.
You're going to need a partner for that, but for example, for the side raise, yeah, you're going to need a partner.
Or you can do a side raise against the wall or something, but
yeah, but
let's say for a squat or something. What can I do for that?
So for a squat, you can, and I'm stealing this from Instagram guy called the gun barrel method, but check him out, it's pretty cool.
What's the guy's name? I might check him out.
It's Coach Eugene Teo, so it's the gun barrel method.
That's right. You send it to me. I'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah. So what you do is you grab a towel and you put it under your feet. Yeah. And you hold it with your arms and you voluntarily push. You're in a semi-squat position, in a squat position, and you voluntarily push without letting the towel. And that leads to a isometric maximal contraction. And you do that for 20 seconds, and then you go straight into bodyweight squats or squats with a very light weight, and you'll fatigue much quicker because you fatigue the slow twitch fibers, and the fast twitch get the work done where they wouldn't do it in a normal circumstance.
Yeah, that's quite nice.
You would have to do a lot of junk volume to do that. You have to do 50 reps without weight to get to the same effect, whereas you do it with 15 reps by doing the isometrics beforehand.
That's nice. That's a nice tip. What about press ups? We just put the towel around the back and then push, or
press ups. That's a good idea. So yeah, put the towel around your back and hold them with your
hands. Push it a bit hard.
Your hands and push, but make sure there's some tension in the towel.
Yeah, we can do.
You can't break the towel, so.
Well, I might break the towel. I thought you were going to break the towel.
I'm definitely going to break the towel. Actually, another big thing that can be used actually in the gym when we get back is understanding the difference between muscular and positional failure. So what I mean by that is if I'm doing a preacher curl and I reach failure, that doesn't mean that necessarily my bicep has reached failure. It means that the ability, this position, I've reached failure to execute the task at this position. But if you finish that and then you grab a very light dumbbell or a barbell and do normal curls, then you'll figure out that you have 5 more reps in you, 4 or 5 reps in you.
The people who do the class on Thursday are going to fucking hate you because I've got some nice ideas.
Great. Don't mention me. Don't mention that I'm there. But yeah, just like you're literally changing because muscles work different in different angles. So if I'm doing a preacher curl, I'm reaching failure at this angle. If I then stand up and do a normal barbell curl, you'll see that your muscle has 5 more to go. So
that's nice. It's some nice ideas there, man. Okay, so I think we're going to end there. I think it's been a good first episode. I did say originally I want to run for 40 minutes, but I think we ran for about an hour and 30 or maybe more. So that's good. I think it was quite good. All right, guys, thanks for coming on.
I still thought the whole podcast was meant to be about rehab.
We'll get around that, Ali. We'll get around that. I'm sure you'll have plenty to add to that discussion.
Maybe from a psychosocial point of view, it was a bit from real.
All right, guys. Right, that's gonna call the end of this episode. We'll check you out.
Guys. Thanks for having me.